Hey guys, hope y'all are doing well, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I want to do a 2v2 tier list. Now, some of you guys in the comments for my 1v1 tier list recommended me to do this, and I thought, you know what, that's a good idea. I've been practicing for the new EGC 2v2 tournament, so I also have a very good understanding of the current 2v2 meta, and what I think is strong at the moment. So, obviously, this is the opinion of, you know, like a pro player, someone who spends a lot of time on this game. Now, obviously, there are going to be differing opinions and stuff, but this is somebody who plays at the top level, right? So just to keep that in mind when watching. Now, yeah, let's just jump right into it. So for China, I think I'm going to put them at. I'm going to put China at a C tier. Now, I could arguably put them at B tier, but I think when I was thinking about my list, I thought, yeah, China's just one of the weaker civs, and in general, I can't really see a situation where I would want to play China over a number of other civs. And the reason is because China doesn't work well with a lot of the really, really good 2v2 civs, right? So if they don't work well with some of the best civs, then in general, they're going to be a bit weaker. And the reason they don't work well is because China is very boom focused, they're very greedy focused, and in 2v2s, the meta is very aggressive. It's very based on your food eco, and China in particular needs a lot of food to be able to thrive because you're producing more villagers, you don't have a villager discount, and I mean, yeah, pretty much that, right? So if I'm China and I'm playing with French, yes, that comp can work because he's going cav, going knights, and I'm going infantry. But with two civs that need a lot of food, and it could be a struggle, especially if you're playing against aggressive civs yourself. So yeah, it's for me can't be any higher than the C tier just because again, it doesn't work well with a lot of the top civs. All right, so let's do Abbasid. Now, Abbasid for me, I think is a pretty average B tier civ. They're a little bit better than China because they do save a decent bit of resources with berries, with fresh food stuff, and I think it's a little bit easier for them to get their second TC out quick comparatively to China. However, they're still not, again, amazing with the top tier civs. Now, in particular, I think they are better with night civs, and that's what you need to be playing with Abbasid here, right? Because you're most likely either going to go for an infantry focused comp or Gamma Archer focused comp, and you're going to need knights on top of that. So French, so Rus. But the issue is you can't really pair them with a fast castle civ, right? Because if you're playing Abbasid and you want to go double TC and your teammate wants to go fast castle, that's just too greedy. So again, you're very limited to very, very strong early game knight civs, which makes them a bit weaker. Alright, I'm just gonna mix these civs up a little bit because they seem. I don't want to put, stack the very, very good civs on top of each other. I want it to be a little bit more mixed up. However, we're getting into what I consider the best civ in 2v2s. Now, I, in my opinion, English is the best civ in 2v2s because there's really no other civ in the game that can do what English can do in 2v2s. Yes, French is really, really good, and yes, they pair with almost every civ in the game, but you really can't compare English to any other 2v2 civ because they do archers so much better than every other civ, right? But and I'll tell you why. They have the best archers in the game, obviously. Their H2 landmark is amazing for that. Having two archer remains instantly is just insane. Their farms are just so, so strong. H3 farms are not even close to English farms in 2v2s, I think, because the cost is just so massive. And also they get the feudal age bonus, right? So they're also getting increased gather rate. So it's just the fact that your units are so strong, your food eco is so strong. You can transition to Castle Age, very nice with the King's Palace, even with the White Tower. There, there are replacements for French, right? Like, you can maybe pick Rus, you can maybe pick Jeanne d'Arc, you can maybe pick a fast castle civ like Ayyubid or Japan. With English, in my opinion, there's no good replacement for this civ. They're too strong in the current meta, and that's just about it. They're the best civ in my opinion, straight up. You can even give sheeps to your teammate if they need to. You really don't need any food. Very, very small amounts of food, especially since your farms are so amazing. So yep, S tier civ. Best civ in the game, in my opinion. Okay, let's do Ottomans. Now, Ottomans is an interesting civ to me because I think they're actually very, very strong in 2v2s because they work well with some of the best civs in the game. Yes, knight civs, but Ottomans... Let's think about why Ottomans is good in 2v2s, right? And that's because they have the ability to generate more food from the sheep visor, and they have some of the best archers in the game. Now, it's not English archers, but they have the meta, they have the attack speed. That alone, combined with the sheep, as well as the Dark Age possibility with military school, with Barak, etc., I think makes Ottomans better comparatively in 2v2s than in 1v1s. Now, your eco as Ottomans is not the strongest, but in 2v2s, it doesn't matter as much because you can, again, you can have a weak eco on one teammate and then have pair that with a very, very strong eco with your other teammate, right? For example, you could do Byzantines Ottomans, and the Ottoman plays very, very aggressive. They play very military, very archer focused, whereas the Byzantine player maybe fast caster goes cataphracts, you know, goes Keshex, does other stuff, maybe even goes Hippodrome, and plays a little bit more on the eco side. And I think Ottomans is one of those civs that has a lot of things going for them in 2v2s. In general, again, not the best civ, but the style of 2v2s works quite well with Ottomans, in my opinion. Now, let's do Byzantines. In my opinion, Byzantines is an A-tier civ. Again, Byzantines has a very strong eco. They have a very good 1v1s in general, right? They can do most things in the game. They can even fast castle with cataphracts, I think, with the buffed H3 landmark, Cistern of the Hill. It's very strong. The one thing that Byzantines does not have is is a strong Dark Age viability. And that's why, in general, I think you want to be pairing Byzantines with strong early game civs, such as Ottomans, as I mentioned, such as English, maybe H3, maybe Mongols, for example. And that's why I'm not putting them S tier, is because if you pair them with French, if you pair them with Ayyubids, if you pair them with Japan, you're very vulnerable at the start of the game. If your French teammate gets Spearman rushed, gets Tower rushed, as Byzantines, if you're not building Dark Age Romatane, which I think is not optimal, you're really not utilizing your civ, your teammate strength to the maximum, right? Sorry. To the maximum because they're getting tower rush. They're not being able to spam those knights like they would be able to with Mongols with English, for example. Now, I'm gonna give you guys the second best civ in the game, and that is French. And the simple reason French is the second best civ in the game is because they're the best knight civ in the game. It's just straight up that simple, and it's the same reason why English is the best civ in the game is because they're the best archer civ in the game. There's a few other reasons, and that's because they have a very strong food eco. Well, not food eco. They have a very strong economy with the faster villages, especially in 2v2s. Having the best knights in the game allows you to get a very good food eco by getting deer on the map and stuff, so you can really play a lot more aggressive based on map control. And yeah, I mean, simple reason, they're better in Rus at nights, they're better at Jeanne d'Arc at nights, so they're the second best civ in the game. Alright, now let's do Rus. Rus, in my opinion, is another ATO civ. They have a lot of viability and flexibility based on what civs they play. For example, you can play H2 Knights with Ottomans. You can even play H3 Horse Archers, maybe with French, or with really anything, right? Like, Rus is one of those civs that could even play Archers in Feudal Age with increased wood income. So you could go French Rus, you could go French Ottomans, you could potentially go Rus English, Abbasid if you want to support them in the early game. Rus is one of those civs that, yes, they're a bit weaker in terms of knight strength than French, but they're still very strong because they have that added viability in other areas. So, good civ. Another thing about Rus I think people underestimate is the amount of food they save throughout the game. High Trade House allows you to play a lot more condensed, and it's very, very nice, especially for fast castling. So, that's another nice thing about Rus. As I think I have to put Delhi in C tier. I'm just not a Delhi fan. And I think in team games, Delhi is even weaker. I'm gonna put them ahead of China, but they're even weaker because I think the main issue is that Ghazi Raiders become not as strong. Because, I mean, obviously, Knights are stronger. You kind of need a Knight save. If your teammate is going Knights or your opponent is going Knights, there's not really as much of a reason to go Ghazi Raiders, right? Because they're weaker against Knights in general, so kind of forces you to play a more infantry style, which I think Delhi is a bit weaker at. And again, Delhi is a very predictable civ in 2v2s if you're playing aggressive. Well, you have to play aggressive with Delhi. If you're up against French English, for example, if you're up against Ottoman English, probably more Ottoman French, Ottoman Rus, might be hard to take those sacred sites if you don't have a very strong teammate, right? Now, Malians. Another thing about Delhi is that if you're pairing them with French, which they're pretty good with French, your friendship ally is very open to getting spearman rushed. Delhi can't really do too much about that, and I think that's a big issue in 2v2 in particular. Having the knight advantage is a very, very impactful thing in the game, and these civs that allow you to get that knight advantage by having Dark Age pressure are some of the best 2v2 civs in the game. Alright, so that's why Delhi is not as higher than C tier. And for the same reason, that is why I think, in my opinion, Malians is not S tier as well, is because they are a bit weak in Dark Age. Now, I think Malians is better than Delhi because they're not as predictable, their eco is stronger. Having cows is very, very strong because, again, food is the most important resource in 2v2s. Allowing you to play that condensed eco is very strong, especially if you're playing on the defensive. Again, not S tier because they're a little bit weak in Dark Age and susceptible to Dark Age pressure. For example, if this was a Gorge only tier list, I'd probably put them S tier because you can't really get harassed in Dark Age and Gorge, so that would make them S tier, but unfortunately, that's an A tier for me, probably ahead of Ruse. Ayyubids. Now, Ayyubids for me is another A tier civ, probably very similar to Ruse in the fact that they could do Feudal Age. I think they're a bit weaker on the Feudal Age side than Rus, but Ayyubids is typically going to be a fast castle civ, right? And that's good. They have a very, very strong fast castle civ. However, I think the major weakness of Ayyubid is the food eco. Besides saving the food on berries, you're not going to be saving that much food throughout the game as Abbads. So if you're not pairing Abbads with English, for example, with potentially Ottomans, Atri, maybe if they want to build farms, it's first of all going to be hard to get Castle Age, and even if you can get Castle Age, it's going to be hard to secure the food out on the map. So you kind of need that additional food eco from your ally. Atri. Now I think Atri is going to be the third S tier civ. And the reason Atri is going to be the third S tier civ is because they have that Dark Age viability. They have the Castle Age Knight viability. They have the Feudal Age viability with infantry. And this is something I think, as Atri, is probably maybe S tier in every aspect. Like, if you think about them, I can play Atri Dark Age versus Mongols and win. That's amazing to have. Because if you're pairing Atri with French, for example, you play Dark Age, you play Feudal Age, you fight against that Mongols, you win, maybe you go even. Well, you have that better mid to late game, so as long as you continue to do that and you protect your ally additionally, you should be at an advantage. And yes, while H3 might be a little bit weaker than English straight up in the Ultra fight, it's still very, very strong. Massing Ultras, for example, is a very strong and viable thing to do as H3. And you can also go farms for the long-term feudal play as well with the Aachen. So, again, I'm just a big fan of H3, especially in team games, because they can do so much and it's always so strong. Japan. Now, Japan's a bit of an interesting one. I gotta say, they're very similar to these other fast castle civs, and I might put them at the top of A tier, though, for now. Just because I think Japan does what Bruce and Ayyubid does, but a little bit stronger, in my opinion. They have a faster castle age, because you don't have to spend additional wood on houses, you don't have to spend additional wood on a blacksmith if you want to get +1 archer, +1 ranged attack if they want to dive you or something, for example. So they're just a bit more efficient, especially with the folding gate, if you want to get those monks out, if you want to get those units out fast, and that slight efficiency really helps team games in particular, because tempo is so important, being aggressive is so important. So yeah, I'm going to put them at the top of A tier, just because they're a little bit better at fast castling than these other fast castle civs. As well as, comparatively to Albid in particular, not as much Rus, because they have the horse archer as well. The Onimusha is very, very strong against Knight civs, particularly, obviously, French, Albid, Rus, I mean, Jeanne d'Arc, for example. So that added viability going into Onimusha and Castle Age makes it very nice as well. I think I'm going to put Jeanne d'Arc just behind Japan here, because the thing with Jeanne d'Arc is that they're, in my opinion, again, I've said this many times, but they're just a worse French. And the thing is that, yes, you might be doing more fighting in 2v2, so Jeanne d'Arc might level up faster, but also the impact of Jeanne d'Arc, especially in the early game, is smaller in regards that she's not getting stronger in 2v2, right? So, like, if your teammate has ultras, then Jeanne d'Arc is kind of just performing the same function as your teammate would be. So your opponents are gonna have to prepare for archers anyway, so they're just gonna be preparing for Jeanne d'Arc anyway, and it's not as impactful as it would be in 1v1s. And if you don't get value from Jeanne d'Arc in particular, like if you're not getting her to level 3 at a decent timing, there's just no reason, in my opinion, to ever pick Jeanne d'Arc over French. And yeah, pretty much it for me on that. Very similar civ, but you just need to utilize Jeanne d'Arc, which I think can be a bit difficult, at least at top gameplay. Maybe it's a bit better on the lower ranks. And with that, I'm going to put Mongols at the top of A tier. Now, man, I'm debating putting them S tier. Okay, you know what? Maybe we do put them S tier. I was debating putting them A tier because they have a bit of a weaker feudal age. I mean, bit of a weaker Dark Age comparatively to a tree, as well as a weaker Castle Age, but I think the feudal age really makes up for it. If you can get an efficient timing with Dark Age into feudal age transition, you can get ×2 archers out, which can put your opponents on the back foot. As well as if you need your Mongol player to go Keshex, to go Cav, they can obviously do that in feudal age, whereas H3, for example, cannot. So Mongols is really the peak Civ in terms of variety, in terms of viability with different compositions. Mongols is pretty much maybe even the only Civ in the game where you can probably pair Mongols with any Civ on this list and do well. Like, I think you could legitimately pair Mongols with any Civ on this list and you could win. Like, no matter what. Not no matter what, but like, if you play well, right? So, you can't really say that with too many other civs, right? So I think that's a unique thing that Mongols has that is pretty awesome. So we're gonna put them at the bottom of S tier there. Order of the Dragon, I'm sorry guys. Well, I will put them at C tier. But they are the weakest civ in my opinion at the moment. And it's just it's a bit sad, but guys, they're weaker than nature at most stages of the game, and they don't even have good infantry in feudal age. I think I mean, men at arms are generally weaker in team games because knights are stronger. Knights are more, well, popular, I guess, if you want to say that, because there's more civs to pick from. So I just, yes, they have an okay Dark Age, and you can probably Spearman Rush and defend your teammate, but besides that, and besides maybe a little bit of castle viability with knights, they don't have that too much going for them. And if you're competing up against like English, Ottomans, Mongols, for example, trying to fight with them in feudal age, I think it's a bit tough. So again, this is top player tier list. Maybe at low leagues, this isn't as bad, right? So take that with a grain of salt. Oops, what was that? I think they will. Yeah. All right, so Zhu Xi, and I think Zhu Xi for me is on the low end as well. Probably a B tier. They're probably very similar to Ottomans. They have good Dark Age. They have good Feudal Age with the Zuganus, and they can do decent income with Meditation Guns as well. But unless you're playing water maps, I just don't see Zhu Xi as being top Civ. If you're playing water maps, then you can arguably put them as a top Civ. But I'm thinking in general, they're going to be a B tier Civ, and again, you can think of them as very similar to Ottomans, except they struggle a little bit more for food. So yeah, that's why I think I'm going to put them behind Ottomans in that regard. They can fast castle, but again, you're going to be desperately in need of food, and you're going to need to pair them with a very strong civ, such as English or Atri, or maybe even Ottomans, right? Maybe Malians, for example. So, hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. Let me know if you have any, if you agree, if you disagree. I'd love to hear your opinions, especially of people with different skill sets, different leagues. If I got close to what you guys were thinking here, obviously I have a very different opinion than the average pro, but I think this tier list is pretty good. And yeah, take care, guys, and hope to see you soon.